I'm here this evening with Stu Webb. I wanted to talk to Stu because in some sources online right now, they're connecting Jeffrey Epstein to Iran Contra as a pilot. And we know he's a pilot and he had some large aircraft registered to him that used to belong to the government. And Stu knew a lot of the Iran Contra people, and including the authors Terry Reid and Al Martin. And he worked a long time on an internet talk show with Gene Chip Tatum, another Iran Contra era pilot. I got interested in those. Sydney Percival once took me, she was showing me a Little Dixie, southern part of Oklahoma, and drove back through Mena, and she showed me where they were during the Iran Contra drug operations. They were dropping drugs into the woods near the Mena airport. And I was surprised because in 2008 or 2009, I have a history in manufacturing aviation. I saw 20 or more twin-engine turboprop airliners that weren't airliners operating out of there in various stages of maintenance, and looked like 24/7 operations. So obviously Mena was still doing government work even at that late of a date. There are people connecting Epstein with Ohio, another stop on the transport of contraband from Mena, Arkansas, on in farther east and north in the United States. But I wanted to talk to Stu Webb about it from his talks with Gene Chip Tatum. If he could just summarize how he came to meet an Iran Contra era pilot, Gene Chip Tatum, and what he knows about the guy. And I understand you're saying that you know of no connection between Jeffrey Epstein and Gene Chip Tatum.
No.
So we're here talking tonight about Gene Tatum, an Iran Contra era pilot. So how did you meet him?
Well, I met him through Al Martin, and I met Al Martin through Margie Sloan. That was her name appears, mine doesn't, and neither does Al Martin, because I was in prison as a political prisoner when the book came out, the Mafia, CIA, and George Bush.
And you contributed to Al Martin's knowledge of when he was writing that book?
He didn't write the book. It was Peter Bruton that wrote that book. Later on, I helped get Al Martin's book published called The Conspirators. Matter of fact, I suppose he owned 10% of it, never got a dime, but it's a great read because he's got everybody in there. But Al Martin I had met about 91 through Margie. Margie had come here to Kansas City with Jonathan Beatty, Warren Beatty's brother of Time magazine, head correspondent, and he did a series of stories and broke the book BCCI that connected what you were just talking about.
Oh yeah, the
and
financing, the bank at the time for the Iran Contra.
Because I had been, the whistleblower on HUD, Silverado, the Denver airport, and what they dubbed the Keating Five, but it was NBC, Silverado's parent company. Neil Bush, director, by the way, and the president's son, money laundering from what you're talking about.
The Iran Contra. And we'll try and make these as short as possible, and we want to get in each of those subjects. But tonight, let's talk about what you remember from Gene Chip Tatum.
Well, Tatum was sent to me by Al Martin. Tatum had gotten locked up in 1992, I believe it was. Around that time frame, they locked him up. They put him in a special cell in Denver after being... And he was in a cell next to later the Oklahoma City bomber, Tim McVeigh.
Oh.
And so he got to talk to him a few things.
Well, what did he get arrested for? I mean, why was he locked up?
He was locked up for refusing to obey an order of neutralizing Ross Perot during the election. Now, I know that because I was told by Al Martin that I should call Ross Perot and have a talk with him because he tried to get a hold of him. Margie Sloan tried to get a hold of him, but Ross Perot wouldn't take their calls. He would take my call. Now, here was the point. Here's Tatum told to neutralize Perot, which means
and let's use that word neutralize, because artificial intelligence filters all these things out, and we don't want to use the other word, the A word, or anything else. So anyway, he
He refused to do it, so they locked him up, kept him in jail for about 3 or 4 years, then let him out. When he got out, Al Martin called me and said, Stu, you need to put Gene Chip Tatum on the air with you, because he's willing to talk now. And he told me, who he was. And when I talked to Tatum, and he told me, he says, oh, by the way, he says, remember, you read the facts that went into Pennzoil headquarters on Chuck Harder's show back in 1991 or 2. I was like, what? Yeah. It needed $3.5 million to do operation against Ross Perot or whatever. And that was a fax that was sent to Pennzoil, J. Hugh Lickey, George H.W. Bush's partner in crime, Pennzoil Corp. And he was the one that paid somebody in part of that operation in Dallas that $3.5 million. Okay?
Okay.
And so I called Ross Perot. Here's the funny part. I called Ross Perot and told him that I got word through Al Martin that he was going to be neutralized. He dropped out of the presidential race. And then when he got back in, after he got his company secure and his postal, rehabbing the post offices with computer, software, when he got his contract all secured and everything, he got back in the race in September. I called him up and said, Ross, what are you doing? You really think you're going to win the presidency? He says, no. He says, I'm going to suck enough votes off of Daddy Bush, or George H.W. Bush. We'll put Bill Clinton in. We're going to nail Bill Clinton for his drugs and guns with Mina. And he says, then Albert Gore will be the vice president, which he's a politician, but he's not involved in this drugs and guns and all the other crap. I said, okay. So that's what ended up happening. But Tatum, around 95, I get a call from Al Martin. Stu, you got to put on Tatum. Okay, well, give me his number, or have him call me. So I talked to him, and he started telling me what he was involved with. I confirmed it through Al. Al had known him all these years and everything else. And so it ended up, I put him on a lot of radio shows with me as a co-guest. Okay, everybody in the country heard him almost during that period of time, that 1995 through 1996 into early 97, about a year and a half total.
And I didn't hear those, but I heard you both later on the internet, and he talked about flying for the Bushes. So he is a pilot, right?
He did, yeah. He was a pilot. He was a damn good pilot, apparently, and he was a helicopter pilot on top of it, and the whole bit. But Gene was involved all over the board. He was kind of like a super spook.
That's right. He was involved in Grenada, if I remember him telling it.
Yes.
So he flew a helicopter then.
Yeah, but remember, I was locked up as a political prisoner with nearly 500 in Denver, Iran Contra players, and then there was another 1,500 in Springfield, Missouri, where they sent me to be analyzed, saying I was nuts, which I wasn't. And the government even said there wasn't anything the matter with me, for trial purposes. The charges were dismissed later with prejudice as a judge screams at the prosecutor for wasting $750,000.
To your knowledge, was Tatum convicted of something?
Tatum wasn't convicted. Tatum, what he did is he blew Jeb Bush's governorship. We pounded on Florida talk shows, several of them, big ones. He pounded him in the ground so bad that Jeb Bush lost the election that year. Okay. And he was so mad at Tatum, he was going to kill him. Tatum had to leave the country. Now,
I remember that, but here you have Gene Chip Tatum has a different career path than most military pilots or civilian pilots for that matter. He has substantial airtime and fixed wing aircraft, of course, which you usually start with and then progress into helicopters. But he essentially flew both. He was flying secret missions that he used to tell you about, and sometimes on the air.
Grenada was one of them, yeah.
And both as a helicopter pilot and as a fixed wing aircraft. They tell you what he was hauling often.
Yeah, but he had, back in the that mid-90 time frame, he got hot. He left the country, went to Central America someplace, and then he resurfaces 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. Resurfaces, contacts me, and he wants attention. Get him on the air and do different stuff. Well, we tried what he was doing really. It comes down to this with these people that work for the Central Intelligence Agency and have been involved in doing all the dirty work. When they get outed for whatever reason, they always want to get back in the fold. So they'll put the squeeze on them. Tatum put the squeeze because he came into the country, came back to the country, and he had a warrant for him. So they grabbed him, some charge, threw him in the jail for 18 months or whatever it was.
I remember that.
And then he contacted me, and he wanted to start.
And he was on probation then, or parole or something.
And so, it came down to, he finally got himself, the charges dropped. He was able to legitimize his newborn as a citizen, and that's what he got out of it. And he went off to Colombia, where he was, had been. Matter of fact, Tatum whacked Pablo Escobar. He was a hitman, Tatum was. Besides being a pilot, he was a hitman for the government.
And I remember him talking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a public.
I got a picture that I had once on my internet site. It was given to me by Tatum, and it shows Pablo Escobar laying there near a hole, dead. Okay. Now Escobar's cousin, I was in jail with in Denver, Colorado, and he came up to me one day after I got back from Springfield. He says, "Hey, Webb," he says, "I never have told you who I am." He said, "I thought I'd chat with you," because I used to keep my mouth shut. People would chat with me. Anyway, he tells me that he had just gotten busted with the largest load ever in U.S. history of drugs coming in the country in their ship that had come up through the Panama Canal and went up the West Coast. And he told me that he had been supplying Hollywood, Escobar had been, supplying Hollywood and the Actors Guild with their drugs for years that was Bush drugs. But they busted him to put him out of business, and the reason they went after Escobar, Noriega, by the way, was the same thing. They wanted money, or they wanted more of the drug cut from Noriega, and so Noriega says, "Hey, screw you, Panama leader," and he nationalizes one of Bush's hotels and nationalizes my ex-witch doctor's father's hotel, which, by the way, Donald Trump bought after Leonard Millman died from the Millman estate. 100% financing. It's on his internet site, Trump.org.
We'll have to discuss that too, but to take it back to Tatum. Tatum shared with you on air about his involvement in the Escobar operation. I mean, was that something he didn't keep that secret?
Yeah, he took out a lot of people. I mean, Tatum probably, I don't know how many, I wouldn't even want to guess or guesstimate, but there's probably a dozen people or more that he's taken out.
And what did he say about drugs? I mean, did he say
he never said that he, hauled himself, but he knew what was going on. I mean, he pounded the hell out of it in these radio programs we did. He pounded the hell out of it.
When he was attacking Jeb Bush in Florida and publicizing.
And Daddy Bush and everybody. He went after them all. He was telling stuff that, was there.
Okay, we're gonna have to get in each one of those subjects, but that's.
Now, I do have up on my YouTube channel, YouTube.com/Stu Webb 1. I do have an audio of Gene Chip Tatum up there on the YouTube. So folks, go and listen to that 1 hour audio.
And on that same site, you have information you can contribute here to Stu. Just barely survives here. He's fortunate that he's got some time to make these videos with me, but occasionally. But we'll try and get some more up there, and be sure and go to stewwebb.com,
STEWEBB.com.
Yeah, I would say that he was so successful in the early days of the internet for a political site because he could say, and I screwed it up, STEWWEBB.com, and people could find the site even if they just heard him on radio. Now we pretty much use the internet more than talk radio did back then. But it's still a site full of a lot of documentation and information about Stu, and anything you would like to contribute. He's got some information there on how to do it. Thanks a lot, Stu.